What if the land you inherited held not just your past, but a deadly secret buried for generations? In the heart of Ghana's Akuapem Hills, one woman returns to claim her legacy, only to awaken spirits that were never meant to rise. This is not just history, it's a haunting. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more mystery stories like this. The sun hung low over the Akuapem Hills, casting long golden shadows across the dense greenery as a black SUV rolled to a dusty stop at the edge of an overgrown path. From the vehicle stepped Afia Serwaa, 28 years old, dark brown-skinned, elegant in a black linen jumpsuit, sunglasses perched on her head. Her eye scanned the land, blinking back the weight of memories she didn't even know she carried. It had been 18 years since she left Ghana. Raised in London by a stern aunt, Afia had always felt disconnected from her roots until the sudden death of her grandmother, Nana Ino Serwaa, forced her to return. The lawyer's letter was brief: "You are the sole heir of the Serwaa estate, including the ancestral house at Odompo village, Akuapem Hills." What Afia didn't expect was how eerie everything felt the moment she arrived. The villagers stared. Children whispered behind their mothers' wrappers. A hunched old woman selling roasted plantains near the junction clutched her rosary and muttered, "Oba no Asain Arba. Abrewa Dua bka no, the woman has returned. The old woman's tree will speak to her." Afia ignored them. She reached the estate just before dusk. The once glorious mansion, a mix of colonial and traditional Akan architecture, was decaying. Ivy curled around cracked stone columns, the wooden shutters groaned in the wind, and parts of the roof had caved in. But the most striking feature was the massive baobab tree that stood silently behind the house. Locals called it Abrewa Dua, the old woman's tree. It was ancient, hollow in parts, with bark so gnarled it looked like wrinkled skin. Something about it unnerved her. It seemed alive. A young caretaker, Kojo, barely 20, greeted her. "Madam, the villagers say the tree is cursed. They say it talks. They say your grandmother," Afia raised a hand. "I don't believe in stories, Kojo. I'm here to renovate and sell. That's all." But the first night changed everything. Afia couldn't sleep. The air was too still. The generator had failed. Candles flickered in the corridor. She wandered into her grandmother's bedroom, guided by some invisible pull. Dust covered every surface. On impulse, she yanked open the old wooden wardrobe and paused. The back panel looked off. She knocked. It echoed. Her fingers searched the edges until she found a latch. Click! The panel swung open, revealing a hidden room. Inside, thick dust blanketed the air. Shelves lined with leather-bound journals and ancestral masks loomed in the darkness. At the center of the room sat a carved stool and a locked chest. On top of the chest, a faded black and white photograph. Afia lifted it. Her breath caught. In the photo, her grandmother, young, elegant, unmistakably regal, stood beside a white man in a British colonial uniform. He held a baby wrapped in Kent. On the back of the photo, scrawled in red ink, "Our secret must never be known. Burn this if I die." Suddenly, the candle flickered violently. The baobab tree outside groaned. And then, Afia, a whisper. Soft. Low. Unmistakable, she turned sharply, heart thundering. No one was there. She bolted from the room, photo in hand, unaware that the whisper had not come from the wind, but from the tree. The next morning, Afia sat in the hidden room, the musty air thick with tension. She had barely slept. The photograph burned in her hand like a forbidden relic, and something deep in her spirit told her that her life had already started to unravel. She selected the first of her grandmother's journals, brown leather, the initials ES embossed on the spine. The handwriting was neat but intense, the ink faded but legible. The first few pages were mundane: market prices, prayer schedules, meetings with the elders. But then, abruptly, the tone shifted. April 16, 1943. I never meant to fall for him. He was married, a foreigner, and yet, his voice felt like freedom. Richard Wallace. His name still tastes like sin. Afia froze. Richard Wallace? The name rang a bell. She Googled it on her phone, despite the weak signal, and confirmed her fear. Major Richard Wallace, colonial administrator stationed in the Gold Coast, 1942 to 1945. British. Married. No records of children. But the journals told a different story. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought the gods were punishing me. The elders warned me no child born of such betrayal would be safe. I begged him to run away with me. He refused. Coward. I hid the child. Even my own family did not know. They believed I had miscarried. But he lived. Strong. Quiet like his father. He now carries the Serwaa name, though he knows nothing of where he truly comes from. Afia's mouth went dry. The child her grandmother hid was her father. Which meant she wasn't just the heir to land and dust, she was the product of a scandal that had been buried for nearly 3 generations. But the journals went deeper. Nana Eno hadn't just fallen for a colonial officer. She had also violated sacred tradition. The journal spoke of Abrewa Dua, not as a mere tree, but as a living shrine used by the women of the Serwaa bloodline to perform spiritual rites. For centuries, the family were guardians of a powerful object, the black mirror of Abonsam. It was hidden beneath the tree after a sacred blood oath was made. The mirror reveals the ugliest truth in those who dare to look. It destroys the deceitful. But in the wrong hands, it could curse generations. I swore before the spirits, anyone who dares betray this secret shall bleed until they beg the earth to swallow them. Afia's hands trembled. She stepped outside, the sun now dimming behind the hills. The tree loomed over her, ancient and watching. Drawn by a force she couldn't explain, she grabbed a shovel from the tool shed and walked toward Abrewa Dua. She dug. The soil was stubborn, thick with roots and centuries of silence, but she kept going. Hours passed. The moon rose. Her shovel struck metal. She dropped to her knees and cleared the dirt with her bare hands until she uncovered a small rusted box, its surface marked with faded Akan symbols. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside, a black velvet cloth, neatly folded. She unwrapped it slowly. There it was. The black mirror. Oval. Smooth. Cold. Its surface reflected nothing. Not her face. Not the moonlight. Just darkness. Beneath it lay a folded letter. In her grandmother's familiar handwriting, though the ink was smudged, stained dark red. Afia, if you're reading this, then the bloodline is broken. The spirits are awake. The mirror must not fall into wicked hands. Whoever betrays the bloodline shall bleed. Suddenly, Afia felt a sharp sting on her palm. The mirror had sliced her. A single drop of blood landed on its surface and disappeared. And then, the whisper returned. Clearer. Louder. From within the tree itself. Afia? We see you now. Afia stumbled back, clutching the mirror. Her bloodline wasn't just marked by shame, it was under spiritual surveillance. And the ancestors were no longer whispering. They were watching. Word travels fast in small towns, and in Odompo, gossip moves faster than the Harmattan wind. Within days, whispers of Afia Serwaa's return and her strange activities near the Abrewa Dua tree stirred tension in the village. By the end of the week, it was no longer whispers, it was Sunday sermon material. At the pulpit of Ebenezer Fire Assembly, Pastor Kwame Oteng stood tall in a navy agbada, sweat glistening on his brow as his voice thundered through the microphone. There is a spirit of Jezebel among us, he bellowed. A woman who has returned from foreign lands, defying God by touching things the ancestors buried for a reason. The crowd gasped. Everyone knew who he meant. Afia, watching the live stream from her phone, scoffed. Jezebel? Please. But even she could feel the fear building in town. Children had begun avoiding her gate. Kojo, the caretaker, had gone mysteriously quiet. A chicken had been found dead near the tree, neck twisted unnaturally. The villagers were spooked. And Afia was now the target. But not everyone in the congregation echoed Pastor Kwame's fire. Mama Doris, the first lady of the church, poised, respected, and seemingly holy, sat in the front row, her hand pressed tightly over her mouth. Her eyes brimmed with unshed tears, fixed not on her husband's preaching, but on her own ghost of the past. Because Mama Doris knew exactly who Afia Serwaa was. 18 years ago, she had given birth in secret, just 15 years old, scared and silenced by Nana Eno's iron will. Her child had been taken away, and she was told it was a stillbirth. The gods claimed her, Nana had said. Doris had mourned the loss in silence, carrying the guilt like an iron yoke across her back through every choir rehearsal and women's fellowship meeting. But now, there was no doubt. The shape of her nose. The arch of her eyebrows. The lilt in her voice, they were hers. Afia was her daughter. That week, Doris made her first visit to the mansion, dressed in white lace and clutching anointing oil. She told her husband it was a prayer mission to reclaim the land from darkness. Afia, suspicious but curious, allowed her in. They sat in the parlor, tension heavy as stale air. Doris's hand shook slightly as she laid a hand on Afia's shoulder and whispered prayers, not just of deliverance, but of forgiveness. That night, when Afia stepped out to take a phone call, Doris wandered into the hidden room. The mirror, now propped against the wall, shimmered faintly, almost breathing. Her fingers itched. She remembered what the old women said long ago, when the mirror sees you, you cannot unsee yourself. Driven by fear, guilt, and desperation, Doris doused the mirror in anointing oil and lit a match. But instead of burning quietly, the mirror ignited in a burst of blue flame, then reflected a vision so horrifying it nearly knocked her unconscious. In the vision, Doris herself, standing over the body of the former pastor, his lips foaming, his eyes wide. She was holding a teacup. Poisoned with rat poison. Her voice whispered, "Forgive me." It was his time. Her husband, Pastor Kwame, had risen to power only after that sudden death. The mirror shattered with a loud, almost human scream. Doris staggered back, eyes wild, heart pounding. But it didn't end there. That night, she began to hear whispers, not from outside, but inside her ears. The voice of the dead pastor chanting scriptures backwards. Her doors slammed without warning. Her reflection twisted and smiled when she didn't. Her sleep was poisoned with nightmares of blood. She tried to pretend it was spiritual warfare. But deep down, she knew the mirror had seen her. And now, it would never unsee. The air in Odompo grew heavy. The animals stopped coming near Abrewa Dua. The wind didn't blow in that part of the village anymore. And then, one night, Afia collapsed. It began with whispers in the walls. She had just returned from a tense visit to town, where a woman had spat at her feet and hissed, "You've stirred the dead." That evening, alone in the mansion, she heard soft knocks echoing through the hallway, though no one was there. When she entered the hidden room, she saw footprints made of ash, leading from the mirror's shards to the ancestral masks on the shelves. She ran. But in the middle of the compound, right beneath Abrewa Dua, her body locked up. Her eyes rolled back. She let out a scream that was not her voice. Then, silence. Afia collapsed, motionless. When she woke up, hours later, she sat up slowly, blinking. Her lips parted and she began to speak Chi, fluently, rhythmically, chanting proverbs and invocations she had never learned. The next day, word spread that Nana Eno's spirit had returned. The village elders, once dismissive of Afia, were now terrified. They gathered at the foot of the tree, joined by drummers and women in white. After heated debate, they summoned Okumfo Tawaya, an elderly Abasomfo from the neighboring Akium village. He arrived barefoot, his body dusted in white clay, cowrie shells clinking with every movement. After studying Afia's trance-like state, he nodded solemnly. "This is no madness. She is a vessel. Nana Eno has entered her. And the ancestors demand justice." The elders gasped. Okomfo Tawaya declared that Afia must undergo the trial of the ancestors, a forbidden spiritual rite abandoned more than 50 years ago because the last participant had vanished without a trace. That night, Afia was taken to the sacred grove near the base of Abrewa Dua. Drums pounded in the background, fires flickered, and Okomfo Tawaya painted ancient symbols across her chest with charcoal and red ochre. The villagers formed a circle. Some prayed. Others watched in fear. Afia, now fully possessed, walked barefoot into the center. The ritual began. As she knelt, the fire roared higher than it should have. A gust of wind encircled the gathering, and suddenly, the spirit world opened. Afia screamed, but her voice split in two, hers and Nana Eno's. In visions, she saw the truth. Nana Eno had not just loved Major Richard Wallace. She had betrayed her people. During the colonial occupation, Wallace had discovered a trove of Ashanti royal gold, hidden during the wars. Rather than return it, he had buried it beneath the sacred Abrewa Dua, bribing local leaders to remain silent. Nana Eno, young, ambitious, and tired of tradition, chose power over loyalty. She protected him, aided him in sealing the site with rituals she barely understood, and accepted gifts in return: land, influence, even secret political power under the colonial administration. But she couldn't hide forever. The ancestors had discovered the betrayal. To keep the secret buried, she had performed a blood oath beneath the tree, using her own blood and that of her infant son, Afia's father, to curse any descendant who disturbed the ground. The curse had lain dormant until Afia arrived, until she dug, until she bled. Now, the spirits demanded justice. Afia's body convulsed. Smoke rose from the soil beneath her feet, and the ground trembled. Okomfo Tawaya stepped forward. She has broken the seal. And now, the dead are awake. She must either bury the truth again, or face their wrath. Afia fell flat to the earth, eyes wide in horror. She now knew the full cost of her grandmother's sin. But it was her own blood that would have to pay. Afia sat alone at the base of the scorched Abrewa Dua, her skin caked with ritual dust, her heart pounding under layers of ancient dread. The trial was over, but her fate hung in the balance. That night, she dreamt of her grandmother standing between two burning trees. Nana Eno's voice echoed. You have two paths. 1. Bury the truth, protect the bloodline, and the ancestors will reward you with gold and favor. 2. Unearth it, and you'll carry madness as your crown. Afia woke to find a white dove dead at her doorstep. A sign. One way or another, the truth had to be reckoned with. Meanwhile, Pastor Kwame Oteng was unraveling. The visions haunting Mama Doris had spread. His wife now screamed in her sleep and avoided her reflection. Church attendance was dropping. Rumors about the mirror had reached other towns. Desperate to regain control, Pastor Kwame called a secret meeting with the village elders. Under the cover of darkness, he offered bribes, crates of schnapps, brown envelopes fat with cash, and land documents stolen from widows. His proposal: banish Afia, declare her a witch, and end this spiritual circus. But one elder, Nana Mensa, refused. Within 48 hours, Nana Mensa was dead. Found seated in his compound, eyes wide open, foam at his lips. A similar death to the one Doris had once seen in the mirror. The village was shaken. And Afia? She began to see visions again, unprompted, uninvited. This time, the mirror's shards whispered secrets, showing her scenes from Kwame's hidden past: a forest clearing, a goat's blood being poured into a calabash. Kwame, younger, kneeling before a shrine, chanting for spiritual favor to ascend in ministry. The former pastor twitching on the floor, a teacup rolling from his hand. The final vision: forged land documents, signed with Kwame's fake signature, used to seize portions of the village's sacred lands. Afia had the proof. But before she could act, Mama Doris beat her to it. That Sunday, the church overflowed. Whispers had already begun about the cursed mirror, the dead elder, the woman at the tree. During the service, Pastor Kwame thundered about spiritual rebellion and generational curses. But his voice cracked. And then, Doris rose. She stepped onto the altar, tears spilling down her cheeks. Before God and man, I must speak. I have lived with a lie. Afia Serwaa is my daughter. She did not die. Nana Eno took her from me. I have watched her suffer and kept silent. But no more. Gasps spread like fire through the pews. And this man, Doris added, pointing at her husband, did not inherit the pulpit. He stole it. He poisoned the pastor, bribed the elders, and made sacrifices to rise to power. The crowd erupted in chaos. That evening, a storm rolled into Odompo, lightning crackled like ancestral anger. Thunder shook the earth. And as the winds howled through the hills, a blinding bolt struck the Abrewa Dua. The sacred tree burst into flames, bright, roaring, impossible to extinguish. As villagers rushed toward the blaze, the earth beneath the tree split open, revealing a chest lined in gold and royal markings, Ashanti gold, hidden for decades. Screams turned to awe. The curse had finally lifted. The police arrived days later, escorting Pastor Kwame away in handcuffs. Land fraud. Ritual sacrifice. Conspiracy. His church crumbled, literally and metaphorically. But Afia? She was gone. Kojo swore he saw her walking into the forest just before dawn, barefoot, wearing white. Others claimed they heard her laughing softly in the wind. A few say she was taken by the ancestors. No one knows for sure. All that remains is her voice, gentle but haunting, whispering through the trees at night. Some truths must rise. Others must burn. They say the past never dies in Odompo. It waits, in the trees, in the wind, in blood. Afia Serwaa vanished, but her voice still lingers. And if you listen closely, you might hear it too, whispering the truth they tried to bury forever. Like, comment and subscribe for more stories by Kofi.